You ready? All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, October 17, 2023 Urbandale City Council meeting. I will call the meeting to order and ask Nicole to take roll call, please.
Blake?
Here.
Carberry Montgomery?
Here.
Kroll?
Here.
McBurney?
Here.
Obrecht?
Here.
Please stand as you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Urbandale's a national leader in character counts, endeavoring at all times to promote and model the principles of trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. In conducting tonight's meeting, we expect that all participants will act in a respectful manner consistent with these principles. Item 2 is approve the agenda. Is there a motion? Motion by Blake. Second. Second by McBurney. Discussion, please vote. Yeah, I know, you jinxed me. It's been like 2 months, Larry, so. Whoa. All right, that item passes. Item 3 is citizens forum. This is the opportunity to address the council on something that's not a part of tonight's agenda. Is there anyone that would like to address the council at this time? All right, seeing none, we'll move forward. Item 4 is the adoption of the minutes first from the October 3 meeting. Motion by McBurney,
Second.
second by Kroll. Discussion, please vote. That passes. And then from the October 10 lunch and learn.
Motion approved.
Motion by McBurney, second by Blake. Discussion, please vote. That passes. Thank you. Item 5 is the consent agenda. There are 8 items for approval.
Yeah, I can ask a quick question.
Sure.
Building permits, Steve. In the consent agenda, it looks like September building permit numbers were significantly lower.
They were, which is not unusual. Our valuations have come way back up. Like I said, they would a few months ago for some big warehouses coming. There's gonna be a push here at the end of the year. I expect them to bump up a little bit.
Okay.
All right. Do you move it?
Second. I think Amy moved.
Motion by Kroll, second by Obrecht. Discussion, please vote. That passes. Moving on then to public hearings. Public hearing 6.1 is a public hearing to consider the surface water flowage and storm sewer easement vacation for Lot 40 Jordan Lee Plat 1 at 5029 149th Court. And the public notice for this was published on the October 6, 2023 Des Moines Register. Ask for any objections to that notice is published.
There were none.
Is for motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Motion by McBurney, second by Blake. Discussion, please vote. That passes. And to introduce this is our Community Development Director, Steve Franklin. Steve?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, all. So this is a request from a property owner to vacate a portion of an existing easement. This is the lot in question here. It's a corner lot. This easement was originally recorded with the Jordan Lee Plat 1 subdivision back in 2020. And in a nutshell, what happened here is these folks got way down the road with a pool contractor designing this and laying all this out, and then they discovered that the pool was going to encroach into the easement. So we got a request from CEC Engineering, who took a look at this and submitted some information to us and indicated that this will not impede storm flow or mess with detention or anything in that regard. City engineer did look at it. City engineer is comfortable with what's being requested. They did add a condition on the permit for the pool that once the pool has been completed, construction is essentially done, and before operation, give us an as-built grading survey so we can verify the elevations in the swale and make sure that everything is in fact still functioning properly. But does not seem to be anything that would cause any issues in any way. Staff recommends approval. Be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the council? Questions for the council from Steve? All right, we are in public hearing on this item. Would anyone like to address the council on this item? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to close? I'm sorry, did you want to, go ahead, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to-
Good evening, Melissa Hills. I'm with Civil Engineering Consultants, 2486th Street. I'm here if you have any questions that I could help answer.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you out there. All right, is there anyone else like to address the council? All right, if not, is there a motion to close the public hearing? Motion by Blake.
Second.
Second by Kroll. Discussion, please vote. All right, that passes.
Motion to approve resolution 191-2023.
Motion by McBurney,
Second.
second by Kroll. Discussion, please vote. All right, that passes.
Motion to approve the first reading of ordinance 2023-10.
Motion by McBurney,
Second.
second by Kroll. Discussion, please vote. And that passes. All right, thank you. Item 7, planning and zoning items. First is item 7.1, the Superstorm Restoration Site Plan at 3300 101st Street. Steve?
This is a site plan for Superstorm restoration. This is their existing site here on the west side of 101st Street. As they analyze their operation, trying to improve things. So here's the existing building. This is the existing drive to the south. And this site plan, this would create a new drive on the north side of the building that would come in from the street to be able to come in and access the site. And then there's a couple of other parking areas, small parking areas of new pavement that they would add. Planning and Zoning Commission recommends approval, subject to the items noted. Would be happy to answer questions.
All right, any questions?
Motion to approve council letter 7578.
Okay, motion by McBurney,
Second.
second by Blake. Discussion, please vote. And that passes. Item 7.2 is the Waterford Way Townhomes Plat 1 Final Plat, 142nd Street and the Springbrook Trail. Steve?
Okay, another final plat, basically at the corner of 142nd and Waterford Road, part of the Roble property PUD. The Plat 3, Barrett Estates Plat 3 preliminary plat included these single-family homes here to the south of the townhomes. Those were approved, the final plat for that was approved on August 22nd, so here very recently. And then this is the townhome portion. It was always intended to plat the single-family homes, 50-foot wide lots here, there are 25 of them. And this is the first phase of the townhomes, which continue to the west here and then turn and go north. So this first phase involves about 4.3 acres in the plat and has 52 units. And again, there will be more that will be coming. So Planning and Zoning Commission recommends approval, subject to items noted. Be happy to answer questions.
All right. Questions on this?
Move approval, resolution 196-2023.
All right, motion by Blake,
Second.
second by McBurney. Discussion, please vote. That item passes. All right, thank you. Item 8, regular agenda items. First is item 8.1 is the petition waiver agreement for the Bentley Ridge Final Plat, Outlot Y and Z. And John Larson will answer any questions if there are on this.
Move approval resolution. Oh. Approval resolution 195-2023.
Motion by Blake,
Second.
second by McBurney. Discussion, please vote. All right, that item passes. Item 8.2 is to consider the collective bargaining agreement for the Urbandale Professional Peace Officers Association, Teamsters Local Number 238. And to introduce this is our Human Resources Director, Erin Freeman. Erin?
Yes, good evening. Before you tonight, you'll see a proposed one-year contract extension with the Police Officers Union. We are actually in the final year of a 3-year contract. So we were set to negotiate later this winter, but decided to offer a one-year extension to the police officers to help with some recruiting challenges that we're having currently. Right now, we have 9 current sworn officer vacancies throughout the rank, which is a significant portion of our staff. Fortunately, a lot of them are from new positions that we just haven't been able to fill the last several fiscal years. 2 have been a result of resignations and then several retirements. So for a variety of different reasons, looking to increase the wage schedule to help with that recruitment and of course retention as well. So what we proposed to them was a 4% scale adjustment on January 1st, followed by a 4% across the board increase in July with a nominal increase to steps 5 through 8 to help with compression and retaining those more tenured officers, and then increasing the sign-on bonus and adding a referral bonus. So a couple different things in there that we hope will help incentivize as we go to recruit again next time. And their membership voted on that recently and approved that on October 2nd. So at this point, we are hoping that you will consider that one-year contract extension as well.
Okay, great. Questions for Aaron on this?
I guess, yeah, go ahead.
Does the higher up to step 4 bonus of 7,500, does that replace the bonus that we had if they were already certified?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now, it's two-pronged, really. We currently hire up to step 3, depending on experience. If somebody's a certified officer, looking to increase that to step 4 to help encourage some mobility between metro cities, and then also increasing that sign-on bonus from 5,000 to 7,500 as well.
So it's currently 5 and we're increasing it to 75.
Yes.
Have we been, well, clearly we haven't been super successful, but has that $5,000 been paid out to any, I know we've had a lot of people in here getting, what's the
Sworn in.
Sworn in, yes, sworn in. So, and it seemed like some of them had experience, so we've been.
Yeah, absolutely. Off the
has
top of
been-
my head, I want to say 3 or 4 times that we've started that. It's tiered, so it's after so many years of service, you know, they are eligible for increments along that time frame. But we have used it 3 or 4 times already in just the last year that we've had it available.
Well, hopefully it'll be even better.
Hopefully, that's the goal.
So after this, and I moved to take Des Moines out of the equation, but with the other suburbs, how are we comparatively with this type of incentive package?
Yeah, the others that we look closely to, other than the obvious Des Moines, is Ankeny and West Des Moines. And this will put us right in line with both the minimum entry pay and closer to the high-end top pay as well. So this is a big step towards getting us in line with those other suburbs.
I've heard talks about the number of steps that we have. Are we going to be reevaluating that as we go into the next contract?
At this time, for sworn officers in the contract, that's not something we've talked about. 8 steps seems pretty consistent with the competition in the metro, but we would certainly look at that if we did an analysis and determined that we needed to.
How many steps was it?
8.
8? Oh, I thought we were at 16.
That is for sworn officers that are in non-union.
Non-union, okay.
Good question.
Did you have a question?
No, you asked it.
All right. Anything further? If not, is there a motion?
Motion approved, Council Order 7580.
Motion by McBurney, second by Blake. Discussion, please vote. That passes. Item 8.3 is consider the employee insurance benefits renewal for 2024. Aaron?
Yes. Well, we're really happy to say that we had another really good renewal meeting with Gallagher, they're a benefits broker. Our health insurance plan is running really well. It's self-funded, so looking at a very nominal increase of just 1.12%, and that's just administrative fees. The plan itself is running as to be expected with actual health claims, so we're in a good position there, so no anticipated changes with the health plan. As we looked at the dental plan, we did ask them to go out and get a quote if we were to be self-funded through Delta Dental with that, as opposed to being fully insured. and they anticipate that we would have some good cost savings if we were to do that based on how our dental plan typically runs. So that is the proposal this year, that we transition to self-funded for dental as well, see some cost savings. And because we're going to see some cost savings there, we are encouraging the council to move forward with increasing the orthodontia limit and the annual benefit limit from $1,500 to $2,000. That is something that is more consistent with just the industry in general and what we're seeing with those trends. Costs are going up, and so limits are going up as well.
That is great news for those
Yeah.
in the age that they're paying for braces.
Agreed. 2,000 is just a small piece of that, but go ahead. It's something. It's very meaningful to those that need it. Absolutely. So we're excited to propose those enhancements just as a result of the cost savings that we'll see as a result of switching that dental to self-funded. No changes on vision, life, AD&D, long-term disability. All of those are remaining status quo. We are in the final year of a rate guarantee for all of those. So not a lot of changes.
All right,
Move to approve Council Letter 7566.
all right. Motion by Kroll. Second. Second by Blake. Discussion, please vote. And that passes. Great. Thank you, Aaron. Item 8.4 is considered the City of Urbandale flag design process. And then introduces is our Assistant City Manager, Curtis Brown. Curtis?
Walk through a brief overview here. There is a lot of detailed information in your packet, but we'll hit the highlights. Over the course of its history, we know Urbandale has had numerous flags. The one that we're most familiar with is the one you see flying there. It has been mentioned here in council chambers before. It is.
Yep.
And the report is these are available at the front desk of City Hall. Understand somewhere around 10 a year are sold. So that was interesting to hear. I think what that shows is people are aware of a city flag and would like to have one for themselves. The last flag, this one we see here, was designed in 2000, and that was a part of an Imagine Urbandale beautification committee effort. I see you
Yep.
remembering that.
I was not mayor then, just for the point, but I was on the council then, so I was on the council, so.
But we have Pat Finnerty's with us tonight. Pat was actually a part of that committee that helped design the flag. It was co-designed by an Urbandale resident together with a Des Moines resident, and then enhanced by an Urbandale graphic designer. And that flag has flown in Urbandale for 23 years now. And we do know, if you even realized when we stood up to say the pledge, that flags are a uniting symbol and a source of pride, without a doubt. Why now? Urbandale celebrated its centennial in 2017. We're clearly setting up for another century of success. We've got plenty of room to continue to grow, both businesses and residences. And we have our comprehensive plan underway, which is setting the table for prosperity for at least another decade, guided by that plan. So a lot is coming together, including the observation by some of our elected officials that now would be a good time to take a closer look at our flag. In the last several years, their flag design has really come into focus. And it's amazing what a TED Talk can do. The designer gave a TED Talk about the design of flags, and that really ignited a closer look at city and state flags across the country, and highlighted an organization that I had never heard of, and you probably haven't either. It's called the North American Vexillological Association. So AJ challenged me to work that word into the presentation. So there you go. And this is people who are dedicated to the study of flags. And NAVA, as we'll call it from here on out, it's super hard to say, has 5 basic guidelines for flag design. Keep it simple, use meaningful symbolism, use 2 or 3 basic colors, do not use lettering or seals, and be distinctive or be related. And so this next slide, NAVA took a survey of the 25 worst flags in the United States. You're looking at them, and you'll see that they violate the conventions that you just saw on the previous slide. You see lots of words, you see complicated colors. It would be very difficult to identify many of these flags from a distance. So these are less than great city flags. They also highlighted the 25 best city flags across the country. And you can take a look there, and these adhere to the guidelines that you saw. They're simple, they're distinctive. When they're flying on a pole, thank you, appreciate that. When they're flying on a pole, they're easily to distinguish from another jurisdiction as well. So there's some examples close by Sioux Falls. You see there in the middle bottom, Crystal, Minnesota, suburban city in the Twin Cities. So there's some examples there of well-designed city flags. Closer to home, of course, the Des Moines flag has really become an icon. That was an initiative of some local residents. More locally, AJ and I heard a presentation from the city administrator in Colfax, that's the lower right. They had gone through a flag design process as well, really initiated within City Hall. So these kinds of designs are happening close by as well. And so the time has come for us to initiate a process on a flag design. Mayor Andewig convened a flag design committee, and he leads that up with community volunteers Pat Finnerty, who is here, Blake Rosendahl, who's also here, Emma Thomas McGinnis is a local designer who we have used over the years for some of our city work as well. And then from staff, of course, we have Derek Zarn helping us out with many of the communications and the graphic design aspect of this, and then AJ and myself on the flag design committee. Together, we've met several times to put together a process to guide the design of a new flag. Pending your approval of the resolution in your packet tonight, the survey and submission process will open on Monday morning at 8 o'clock and then run through the end of January. So there is ample time for people to be involved. Anyone, anywhere can take the survey or submit a flag. The survey asks people about different aspects of what an Urbandale flag might feature, from colors to symbolism to events in the life or history of the community. And also, there is an opportunity for people to submit their flag designs together with a short narrative about why that flag design was submitted. We expect a lot of feedback. We're going to be working very hard to get the word out and to involve many people. Most importantly, we want the process to be fair. We want it to be transparent. We want it to be inclusive. Those are 3 very important principles. And at its best, it'll also be fun and a great way to unite the community and really get people involved in doing something for their community. So the process will be after these 90-plus days go by, the Flag Design Committee will pull together additional experts from across the community, graphic designers, historians, artists, et cetera, to help sift through what we hope will be a lot of submissions. And we'll also look at the survey data to see what really rises to the top, because we want this to reflect what the community is telling us. The designs, a limited number of them, will be forwarded to the City Council. We held back on identifying a specific number, but a limited number of designs will come to the council. We will ask the City Council to vote on their top 3 designs, and the top ones will then be presented to the public for a final vote. And that will happen both online and in hard copy, so I want this to be accessible. And then at the end of that public voting, we will know our flag designs. The idea is that the designs that come to the council
would be ones that the Flag Design Selection Committee would be proud of and would recommend endorsing. And then certainly by the time the designs come from the council table, there should be a strong confidence that any of those designs could be good flags for the community. And then it's time for the community to decide. And that public voting will be, that portion is limited to residents of Urbandale, self-certified, not audited, but it's really the community then that should choose their flag. So then that final design should be done and chosen by the approximately May timeframe. And then the reveal of the new design would be at the 2024 State of the City address. And by the time we get to the address, flags and items with the flag will be available. Then we'll have the opportunity to have flag raising ceremonies, things like that. And then really to continue using that as a public asset. At its best, we won't be replacing the flag often. It's something that should endure as a symbol of the community and really become a bedrock asset. So with that, plus all the information in the council letter, are there any questions or concerns that we can take care of now?
Was there consideration of like an honorarium or something for the winning design?
If only briefly, we did look at the processes of the 25 best flags from across the country. That sometimes does show up. But one thing we were mindful of is that we are going to receive a lot of submissions. And we were very clear that once a submission came in, it could be used on its own, but more likely it may be combined with other submissions. Elements of it may be used or not at all. So a short answer to your short question is no, we did not seriously consider an honorarium because it might in the end be hard to identify whose that was. But they'll certainly, I mean, what we want to do in the transparency is we want to give credit to everybody who submits. So while we won't use their name, we do intend to show all the designs that were submitted.
So if we ended up with one designed by a Urbandale High School student, we wouldn't be acknowledging that it was an Urbandale High School student.
So one thing that we are careful about saying is that at the end of the process, we do reserve the right to make a particular adjustment if unforeseen circumstances come up. It's possible that if it was very clearly identifiable that somebody's design was chosen, perhaps we could consider that. Certainly want to keep that option open. But putting an honor, we certainly don't want to put out the expectation of some type of monetary compensation or award at the beginning.
This is a very thorough process. I'm impressed.
We're trying, well, that is a credit to everybody who is involved in this. We've reviewed it several times and really appreciate everything that came forth from the committee. I think we asked a lot of those hard questions, thought through what's the best way to handle them. I think this is a good point. Does any of the colleagues from the committee want to add or say anything about the process? Okay. Other questions? This is good. It's good to ask now.
Yeah, it's, well, it is good because we've vetted a lot of, pretty much all of this as we've sat through a few meetings on this.
So Curtis, I assume that we're allowed to submit numerous times if we so chose to do it, right? So do we have, is the window too large?
What we don't think so.
Okay.
Because we do, again, we want to give everybody a chance. We do hope that at its best, perhaps elementary and high school students are able to be a part of this process as well. And we think it's a reasonable timeline to get it out there and then get timed for the State of the City.
So you will be promoting this with the local schools and
Definitely.
districts?
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah, we've put together a plan of ways to get the information out there and share it. And now, The state of Utah has gone through a process to redesign their flag. Minnesota is looking at theirs. And they really do become a great opportunity for community engagement. And that's what we hope to see.
Perfect. Thanks, Curtis.
Do you have like colleges and universities, art departments on there too? I think that'd be a good place.
It can be, it can really be anybody, yeah.
Make a note on that.
So,
Any other questions or concerns?
Motion to approve Council Letter 7583.
Second?
okay, motion by McBurney, second by Kroll. Any further discussion? If not, please vote.
Curtis, could you email the slide that has the good examples to us?
Okay, that item passes. And you can also go to the NAVA website too, and actually, that's where it comes from too. So if you just go to the North American Vexillological Association. Here we go. And all that information's there. And we do have some links though to specific cities that, you know, like Cedar Rapids and some other cities have gone through this, that we can get that out. So yeah, we'll get that information out. So Curtis definitely did a lot of investigating on this, and we did take the best of other examples. I want to thank Curtis and staff for doing a lot of work on this. And Pat and Blake, thank you for your roles on this as far as being on the committee too, and Derek as well. So thanks everybody for, there's been a lot of time spent on this so far, and I think it's going to be a good process moving forward. All right, moving on then, item 8.5 is to consider the professional services agreement for the Medicaid GEMT cost reporting and Medicare CMS cost reporting. And to introduce this is Fire Chief Mike Carville. Chief.
Mayor, members of council, what you have before you tonight is a professional services agreement between the city and Road Consulting LLC. If the name sounds familiar, it's the former fire chief from Clive, Rick Rowe. GEMT is basically a opportunity through the state to backfill lost income from billing. We bill out our medical calls. We typically bring in right now about $620 per call is what we're receiving. But when we transport a Medicaid patient, we're actually receiving on average about $136. So this is a program that allows through the state to take federal funds and through a pretty significant process, gain some backfill will allow us to help fill that gap. And last year, the program's only been around for a few years, federally approved in 2018. We've been doing it for the last 3 years. And last year, the city cut about $648,000. So it's a pretty significant amount of money that we are bringing in. The program has grown significantly, but as anything with the federal government is involved, it's very laborious in terms of the amount of paperwork that has to be done. There's a lot of unique calculations that have to be done. And actually, Chief Rowe is well suited to do these, as not only has he done them for Clive and then for other fire departments, but he was actually involved in some of the original planning here in the state of Iowa with regard to how the program was going to be put into place. So that's the first piece of the agreement. The second piece of the agreement is actually a requirement from the federal government for the Medicare program, which is if you receive Medicare funding, then you need to fill out another new form that they want us to do.
Sorry about that. And for that process, again, it's a very similar set of data, but somewhat different. Every department across the country, every ground transport agency has to go through this. This is our year, starting data collection in 2023 with final submission in July of 2024. So the agreement is for Rowe Consulting to provide up to 50 hours of services to do the GEMT filing, which is due at the end of November, and then to accrue the data and the information over the rest of the year so that he can submit our paperwork to the Medicare, the CMS group, in July of 2024. Happy to any questions for you.
No, we don't need to make it in the motion.
No, we'll get it correct.
Okay.
Chief, we just noted, a couple of the council members just noted there is a typo in the agreement. It does, there's one spot that says City of Clive versus City of Urbandale, so if we get that.
Determination.
Full agreement?
Yeah.
I will point that out to Chief Rowe.
Terminate our contract for us.
Cleaned up before we finalize that.
I will make sure that that happens.
All right. With that, though, any other questions or there's a motion?
Move resolution 199-2023.
Okay, motion by Blake,
Second.
second by Kroll. Discussion, please vote. All right, that passes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Item 8.6 is to consider the purchase of the calcium chloride for snow and ice removal, and John would answer any questions if there are on this.
Move to approve council letter 7574.
Okay, motion by Kroll,
Second.
second by McBurney. Discussion, please vote.
And that's a guarantee we won't need any more than this, right?
For any of it. That item passes. Item 8.7 is consider the equipment purchase for the parks vehicle. And again, John will answer any questions on this.
Approval of council letter 7576.
Motion by Blake,
Second.
second by McBurney. Discussion, please vote. That passes. Item 8.8 is to consider the bids for the Senior Recreation Center roof replacement project. And Jan, are you filling in for Scott on this? If there are any questions?
The only question I had was, this is a good time for us to consider installing solar since we're already ripping up the entire roof. Would we save more money now, doing it now versus later on down the road if we opt to do it?
Yeah, great question. I actually asked our facility supervisor today about that, and he said there are actually two separate projects. The roof, you'd need to get the roof repaired first, and then if it's something the council wanted to pursue, that would be more of an electrical type project. Did want to note that the building was built in 1975. Renovations and the roof repair were done in 2001, so it is 22 years old already. So with the cost recovery of solar, if that's something the council directs us to do, we certainly can get a CIP page, but the age of the building would be something that you'd want to consider. It's not a huge roof as well, but to answer your question, at this time and what's before you tonight, it would be two separate projects.
What type of roof is this then? It's a membrane or?
And again, I'm going to regurgitate what their facility person said, but we are adding a new membrane. It's thicker than the other one, as well as adding a cover board. So what was initially bid, or our estimate initially was for a thinner membrane, and they're recommending to have a thicker membrane.
Okay. And is this, because we've seen a huge increase in hail events, and now is this more resistant to hail then? So we don't have to repair it again so in the future, or like what's the?
Yeah, we have a 20-year warranty on it, so we should be set now as we go forward.
All right, thank you.
Move approval of council letter 7581.
Motion by Kroll,
Second.
second by McBurney. Discussion, please vote. All right, that passes. Thank you. Item 8.9 is consider the Coyote Management Plan. And Jan, I'll turn it back to you to introduce this.
Sounds great. Nicole, if you could pull that up. Before you tonight is the City of Urbandale Coyote Management Plan. In the last couple of years, we've been talking more about coyotes as development happens in our community as well as throughout the metro and the state. Land gets developed, there's less area for wildlife, and we see there's more sightings and encounters with wildlife in particular. Before you tonight is the coyotes. So in an effort to increase awareness and the knowledge of the coyotes, as well as provide helpful information to citizens and a way for them to communicate with the community and when to touch base with the city and when not to, we are working with the DNR to put this management plan together. And Andy Kellner, a wildlife biologist from the DNR, we're going to tag team on this presentation because I will be the first to admit I am not the expert and he is. So we also, Dustin Amy, a conservation officer, is here as well from the DNR. So we have the experts here to share the information that we have before you tonight. And we're very excited the DNR selected Urbandale to be the pilot program. So colleagues from throughout the metro are looking toward, if this gets approved tonight, they're looking to adopt this as well. Because with many things, obviously, that you work with your colleagues throughout the metro, consistency is important. So tonight, what's going to be reviewed with you is the natural history and ecology of coyotes. I can tell you I have learned more about coyotes in the last year than I ever thought I would in my life, much to the credit of Andy. And I do need to give credit also. Scott Hoke was going to be presenting and share the information. He's sick today, so I'm filling in for him. So also tonight, with this management plan is the guidance for citizens of how to prevent conflict with coyotes, as well as what to do for the interactions, and then what we are doing in steps for the city of Urbandale and action steps under understanding direct removal and monitoring. And certainly a big part of this is the education and outreach plan. So I'm going to pass the baton to Andy here, and he can share some of the information.
Sure, thank you, Jan. And I mean, you say selecting you guys as a pilot program, but big kudos to Urbandale Parks and Rec and having the open conversation with us and really coming to us saying, hey, what can we do? And us being like, well, yeah, what can we do? And it going back and forth, and it really is a joint effort. So I've appreciated that. I appreciate Urbandale stepping up and actually taking the reins a little bit on this, because any wildlife, coyotes included, it's something where we have regulations and hunting opportunities or whatever it is across the state, statewide rules and regulations. However, you zoom in down to an urban area, and obviously those things are compressed or taken away, whether it's through city ordinances or just because of the space we're talking about. So going forward, what we really started with was trying to detail out some of those natural history and ecology components in the plan that we think are useful tidbits for whether it's a citizen that's curious about it, a citizen that's experiencing coyotes in their subdivision, or whether we're talking about the city officials and city staff, that this background information may be useful for them. At the same time, it always comes with, I learned a lot through this process too. We're always learning about it, and the dialogue back and forth is something that I want to continue in the plan to be a living thing, as well as the communication between the department and Urbandale going forward. Some key things that are really important to consider, especially when you're talking about conflicts in an urban setting or outside the urban setting, is what does that timeline look throughout the year? The coyotes are going to act a little bit differently depending on what time of year we're talking about. When we're in winter, January, February would be the two key months when we're talking about the coyote breeding season. So anytime any wildlife is in that breeding time period of the year, things tend to be a little bit more aggressive or more dominant, or just showing their presence more. And we see that with coyotes as well. So their breeding season in the winter is when we'll hear more vocalizations. We may see more movement patterns from coyotes. This is also a time period we really need to consider interactions with pets, interactions with dogs specifically. The canine interactions are going to tick up at this time of year. After that, we're talking about pup rearing, and obviously animals are going to be defensive about their young and what that looks like depending where it's taking place, where the den is located. And then we get into this time of year in the fall, and we really start seeing some dispersal. Maybe the adolescent, if you will, coyotes from previous years are moving to find a new place to set up shop, or maybe develop a new pack or that sort of thing. So it's more of that expansion and movement. And that's when you get into the discussion of home range and what that looks like. And while this is a lot of words and kind of boring, what we really sum up when you're trying to dictate or describe, I guess is the better word, a home range of coyote, it's going to vary. It's going to vary depending on what does the habitat look like, what are the river corridors around, what is the space available. But it also depends on if we're talking about a pack that has a structure and it's established in a place. So that's more of the resident pack, and so you're talking a smaller area. And you'd actually see smaller home ranges of that sort of pack in an urban setting as compared to a rural setting where they have more availability to move in more places, less restricted. Now, the opposite of that, or the other end of it, especially during dispersal, is when you have coyotes looking to go into a new place, or a young coyote looking to set up shop in a new place, what we might call transient. And so that's where that home range size or the amount of movement might kind of expand to a bigger area and include more things. But overall, they need those key components of shelter, they need a water source, they need a food source, and all that comes into play. And they're gonna move through a lot of those natural habitats, but in that, in an urban setting, you also are gonna have some of the either residential or roadways or businesses or any of those sorts of things. So this isn't from any actual study or anything, but just taking those sizes, those square mile areas and looking at what examples of those could be, I kind of outlined 2 areas and picking and choosing along what habitat corridors I would naturally look at if I were looking at coyotes in a study and what those 2 different home range sizes look at. So the yellow is more zoomed in. That would be a smaller area. That would be an established group of coyotes. But notice that they can move easily between different sides of the river, finding different methods to get across. They could move in and out of home areas if there's a creek that flows through or timbered habitat. That may be at night. It probably wouldn't even go noticed by anybody. But that's where they're going to kind of call home, if you will. Now you zoom out to that blue outline and that would be an example of the size or the range of what it would look like for a more transient, maybe a younger coyote, a coyote that's moving around more. And one of the things that's really important to consider, and we'll hit on later in the presentation, is what would the interactions of those 2 different groups look like? If you have that smaller yellow home range size of a pack that's established and has its territory, and then it encounters a more transient coyote or maybe a pair of coyotes that's moving in that bigger area, and there's an overlap there, there's gonna be a meeting and behavioral component to what the actual interactions between coyotes look like. And that's important for us to consider going forward with what steps we take and how we interact with coyotes. So that's just some of the basics on where the coyotes are coming from, that ecology, and what their size or their habitat might look like. They're gonna be moving around in these areas. They can cover roadways or go across roadways very easily. They could go under roadways easily. They're gonna follow river corridors initially, but they're gonna branch out from there based on other things too. So as we get into it, there's a list of some of the main things that we can do to try to, even before there's an issue, prevent the conflict from occurring with coyotes. So coyotes are across the United States. They're in rural and urban areas in many places across the state. And actually, when we were developing this plan, we were taking chunks of plans from other cities across the country that already exist and are implemented successfully in those areas, including Chicago, Dallas, Denver, Bloomington, places like that. There's a study going on in Chicago with coyotes that they've had Ohio State University involved in those studies there. It's been going on for over 20 years. So this isn't a new thing, and we didn't want to reinvent the wheel, but these are specific talking points coming from those other plans that have been successful in those areas. Most negative interactions with any wildlife, but coyotes included, revolves around the animal getting used to coming up to people, and that's coming up because there's a reason to come up to them. And the biggest driving factor for this wildlife is food availability. So even if you don't think it's an issue, it's something to definitely pay attention. Something as simple as a cat colony or people feeding pets outside is a huge attractant to wildlife, including coyotes. They're coming up, maybe even unbeknownst to these people, and utilizing that food source, or they're taking advantage of the other animals that are coming up and utilizing those food sources, whether it's mice, rats, cats, possums, things like that. But if anybody has a dog at home, you know that it's not one type of food that canines eat. So it can be as simple as fruit that's not cleaned up from a fruit tree that they'll take advantage of. Overflowing bird feeders, if there's piles of bird seed down, my dogs eat it, so will coyotes. So it's just any of those things. If it's an available food source, available water source, be thinking about that and that sort of mindset of how can I clean this up a little bit to make it less appealing to the coyote to be here in the first place. When people are starting to have those interactions with coyotes, one of the things we wanted to make sure to do in the plan is specify what are these different sort of interactions. What's actually happening? Are you just seeing a coyote? Because we've already established that coyotes are in the urban area. They're throughout the Des Moines metro. Just seeing a coyote, even if it's during the day, is actually not that outstanding of a thing to happen. It's something that's gonna happen. You're gonna have residents that are gonna see it. So just seeing them or just hearing them, even if it's in daylight, isn't necessarily something to worry about, but it's worth paying attention to. Now that homeowner knows there's coyote activity in the area. So hopefully with continued education and talking with them and doing more outreach, that should trigger the, oh yeah, I gotta make sure to keep my pet on a leash. I shouldn't be letting them run loose. I should be picking up dog food because there's coyotes around. So it can go from an observation to a sighting where they actually see it in person, to an encounter where maybe that's where something is a little bit closer. Maybe that, maybe the coyote escorted them through a park or something like that, to transgress to the point where it's an incident where, hey, there's some aggressive behavior going on. This is something we need to be more aware of and actually maybe be reaching out to somebody to get help, let the neighbors know, that sort of thing. And then obviously where we don't want it to get to is to the point where there's a pet attack or anything like that. I don't know if this was your slide or not, but in the case of where there is the transgression or those higher level events occurring, that's where we definitely want communication to be happening. And Jan can talk a little bit about who they're gonna be calling and why we choose this. But one of the things that we definitely stressed during the process of creating this plan is communication is good, reporting that stuff so we know what's going on, so we can get more information out there and know the reasoning behind it so that we can educate and prevent it from happening again.
Thanks, Andy. I want to acknowledge Chief here as well, that he's worked with Scott and I and Andy of putting this plan together, and we had talked about when people are reporting, some people think Parks and Rec, some people think the police department. And collectively, we said, you know what, it might make sense to contact the police department because they have a more efficient and effective way of keeping track of calls. So we'll have a record of that. And as Andy had mentioned, then if there's a frequency or an uptick in a certain neighborhood, then we know for signage or communication and things like that. So that is how we will be doing it if this plan gets approved, is having a non-emergency number at the police department. And we will communicate that again on social media and nextdoor.com and things like that. So wanted to show you a video of an encounter. This is actually when I was out walking my dogs about 2 months ago, and it followed me for 20 minutes. And it didn't sprint at me, but it sure wasn't backing down. And it kept following within 20, 30 feet. So
Escorting us.
again, as we describe the different types of interactions, this would be considered an encounter.
Is that barking your dog or the?
No, this is the coyote. And there's different, we've had when we've been out walking, a number of them, and they start chirping. There's many different types of, and Andy was talking as well. They communicate just like we do, and there's different types of communication. So just wanted to show an example of a year ago when I haven't learned as much as I have. My heart was pounding. Now I finally turned around and ran back at it. It was like, enough of your yapping, and it took off. And I knew it was still in the weeds and so forth, but again, that interaction, that's what's going to be important about this plan is communicating that and educating the public about it. So the action steps for the city, for staff, after a citizen report, and again, observations, and I'm not going to read this whole thing to you, but this is normal and doesn't warrant any special response. So with increased coyote activity, obviously there's going to be more observations and sightings. And I and Scott in our office will receive just a random, not a random, but an email, I observed it in this area. And then some are more of the encounters where what I just showed you is an encounter where it's continuing to follow me. And that's where it's to call the police department, we'll log the call. If it's a park or trail area and we have a number of those or a high number, then we will post warning signs so people are aware. And we do have 2 examples of the different signs that we have put up. One is for the warning sign, and then one is for, and we'll have it in our presentation here as well, is if we actually do the hunting. So these are just examples of the signs that we do put out and have put out. So again, for the attacks, this is something, if a dog attacks a human or a coyote attacks a human, obviously we want to get that report. We'll take information, we'll post information nextdoor.com. We're going to try to be as proactive as we can of informing and educating the public, and also of posting those signs. But if an attack happens on city property, then, and if it's available for trapping, then we will look at that and work with the DNR to see if that's an option for trapping. And I'm going to have, I know that we've had a number of different communication with different neighbors, and some of them have had their dogs killed, and it's been a very emotional and situation, but trapping and killing coyotes isn't always the first response that we should be looking at. I'm going to have Andy explain that.
Sure. So going back to that home range example of where those different packs could overlap, coyotes can be very territorial with other coyotes or with other canines. That's where some of the pet interference or pet conflict will come from. But what you need to know is if there's an established pack somewhere, they're going to be keeping the other coyotes out of that area. That's kind of rule number one, and that's where that escorting behavior comes from, with keeping an eye on. It actually didn't have anything to do with Jan. It had to do with her dogs being there, other canines in the area where they might have a family group, or maybe their pups are starting to move around more and start going. And so that's why they're doing that behavior. And there'll be that territoriality between coyotes. So if somebody sees a coyote and you say, all right, let's lethally remove it, you remove that coyote or the whole pack of them, if you were able to do it, which would be tough. It's tough to trap them or get rid of them. You've created a space that's available habitat where other coyotes could move in. So if you have coyotes that are just there, they're eating, the mice or the rats or the rabbits in that area, not really getting in the way of doing anything, not attacking pets, and you remove them, you don't know what you're going to get instead, because just like dogs have different temperaments, different groups of coyotes will have different temperaments too. The other thing to consider, and this is from extensive, like years and years and years of research, coyotes are extremely resilient and extremely adaptable. We see two things really happen when there's lethal pressure on a pack of coyotes. The first thing that happens is that instead of it just being a family group with only two of the coyotes mating, is we'll see that splinter into smaller groups. And then all of a sudden, instead of just one pair mating, you've got 2 or 3 different pairs of coyotes that are potentially mating. So you have more mating pairs out there in the landscape because it'll splinter and move apart. The other thing that happens is they have compensatory reproduction. I'm glad that the vocabulary before is not as tricky of words. Their system will actually produce more pups per litter if there's lethal pressure on them. So you could, if you come in indiscriminately and try to kill coyotes, which good luck. It's very difficult to find them all and kill them all. We know they're throughout the metro area. If you do that, you're potentially going to either create youngsters that are moving out on their own and haven't really been trained by the adults and then are also mating pairs, and you're also increasing the litter sizes going forward. So you're just going to actually elevate the number of urban trained coyotes that there are, as opposed to keeping in play what's there. That being said, there's a time and place for lethal removal. There's a reason why we statewide have an open hunting season on coyotes all year long. And it's because if it is a coyote or a pack of coyotes that are causing an issue, I do think it makes sense to go in and take those steps to try to remove that issue animal so that it doesn't perpetuate in there and that there's room for a pack that maybe isn't causing those issues. So I'm not going to shy away from saying there is a time and place where coyotes do need to be removed. Instances where pets are attacked, I think, is a good tipping point where you say, yes, this is where we should be considering this, but we need to be careful with how we go forward on it.
And with that, we should also reiterate that we are in an urban environment and people should not be just open hunting on coyotes in an urban environment, correct?
That's very fair, yeah. And like I said at the beginning of this, I mean, you go out into a rural context and there's an open, wide, year-long hunting season. You come into a city and you're not going to be discharging a firearm inside city limits, and it's not safe to do because of all the background noise, if you will. And it's not legal to do because of city ordinances that are in play. So that's again a reason why we should go through a certain steps. The city does already have an ordinance pertaining to trapping. It would have to go through the police department to be approved or any of that sort of stuff.
Thank you.
And when you say that we get to the point of using lethal options as the only necessary step left, it doesn't mean that we're going to go in there month after month, year after year, and continue to do that. It just means that we're going to try to identify the source of it and remove that source, and then allow hopefully a more tempered down version of the population to come back, because that's ultimately what we're aiming for, right?
I think that's a very wise way to view it, because if the habitat is there, at some point, coyotes are going to move back into it. Again, it's established that they're utilizing these urban spaces. Most of the coyotes nobody even knows they're there. They're operating in the background. If you were to try to do a complete elimination of them, I think you would fail. They're very difficult to pin down, and again, they're very adaptable and resilient. There's been efforts out west or in other places where they've tried a lot of different tactics for getting rid of them completely. An example, and not to harp on the point, but when European colonists were first moving into Iowa, a lot of the predators had a bullseye on them, right? And so they were getting rid of bears, wolves, mountain lions, all these things were persecuted. And the only one that really remained in the state and made it was coyotes. They were able to survive through that and then kind of, regroup, if you will, and come through it. So I don't think you would be successful, and at some point, new ones are going to move in. So it would be ongoing. It would incur a lot of cost. And I think you would find also a number of people on the other side that don't want those things to be happening to those animals as well.
And just a note, as it's stated here, if we were to trap, and if it's agreement with the DNR, that we would use a certified and licensed wildlife control operator, where it's not just city staff, and it was mentioned, if it is on private property, they would need approval by the police department, and that is very infrequent that it gets approval. So just wanted to show quickly examples of the coyote trapping that we've done in 2023. We had some concern after a pet attack in the Hallbrook area. So we trapped from January and February, and no coyotes were removed during that process. Then the area I think that we're most familiar with is this is the 30 acres of timber from the water utility that residents in this neighborhood have had. A pet was killed in 2021, so we trapped April, May, and June. 2 coyotes were removed, and then we trapped again in May of 2022, and no coyotes were removed. And just to note, we did meet with the Water Utility Department, I think in 2022 is when the residents came to the council meeting expressing concerns. They have cleared up most of the debris that is back there. If an emergency or a water line break or something, they have concrete that they need to bring out there, or tree limbs, they bring it much further into the property, and then within a few weeks, as time allows, they take it out of there. There was a pile of logs that have been there a long time around this property line here that last week the park staff took that out. That was a concern from those residents as well. So walking back here, it's very cleaned up. It's very clear as you enter at the end of this cul-de-sac. Actually, they have the cement blockades up that you cannot walk through there with the fence that says no trespassing, water utility. So it's very clear this property, you shouldn't be walking on that. So I also want to share the warning signs. We have those examples that we just showed. So where the blue dots are right here, there's the larger warning signs, and we install them when we're actively trapping. So that's this sign here. The yellow dots are the no trespassing, coyote trapping in progress, installed when we're trapping. And then here are the no trespassing signs that are up year round. And this is the signage used when we're for warnings that are up year round. So these 3 right here on park property are up year round, just making people aware. We know there's coyotes in the area. And again, this is the neighborhood. This is not park property. So that's the water utility property. So the signage is up year-round, and if there is that heightened or more increased activity, we would put signage up accordingly. So just the summary of what we've talked about, so the different mating seasons. If an area has a high number of encounters, we'll post signs, we'll communicate to the public on social media, and we'll put up signs. And if we do trap, we certainly are going to communicate. That will be a direct mail to those neighborhoods, as well as we'll post signs. So that was a lot of information, but it's a significant management plan that we're proud of. And as Andy said, Scott and staff and the police department and myself, we've worked a number of months putting this together, and we'll answer any questions you might have.
I was just going to say, thank you for putting this together. I am curious, how will we assess the effectiveness of this plan?
It actually is formalizing what we've been doing. So I think now that we have a set process that all calls will go to the police department and we'll be able to better track those numbers, then I think that will help us better understand, are we having an increase in some areas? Is it a certain time of year? So we can reflect, as Andy said, is it during mating season? Is it when pups are coming? So that will give us, if there's trends that we'll be setting. So I think that might answer your question in regards to, we'll see as people become more educated as well. And we want people to call and let us know if it is something more than a sighting. Just seeing coyotes is not something spectacular.
So Chief, how is this going to impact you from a staffing perspective? Sorry to drag you up here, Chief.
Oh, that's fine. One of the things we talked about when I met with Jan and Scott were calls are coming to us anyway, so most of the time. So it made sense for us to take over that duty of logging those, and with the CAD system, we should be able to track them. The program actually calls for a quarterly report. So I'll just have my administrative staff pull those numbers quarterly and send them over to Jan and Scott, and then they can determine, it'll have location, times, all that on it. And then I suppose we could put those together annually, and see what the numbers are there as well.
Are those
quarterly? So I don't think it's a huge burden for us. Calls are coming into Westcom anyway. I'm working out the details with them on how they get that information logged, when it has to be logged as a CAD, as a trip in their CAD, or when they're just going to forward the information over to us to our email account or our phone number.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up, was just how do you balance which ones warrant a trip versus which one Westcom's just.
The plan kind of lays out, and I can't remember the terminology, but it lays out when we need to be taking a CAD call and potentially sending an officer. That's an encounter, right? An encounter, I believe it was an encounter.
Yeah.
And then obviously any attack, we would be taking a report anyway. For a pet attack or a person that's attacked, we would actually be taking a full police report on that also. So yeah, from encounter on. So I've kind of laid that out for dispatch and how they should be handling those and getting them logged into the CAD. So when we do run that report every quarter, we should be able to get good numbers.
Thanks, Chief. Appreciate it.
So if somebody calls and just say, I saw one in my backyard to Westcom, what are they just gonna?
They're going to refer them to our general email.
Are they gonna put the address in an email and send it to you, or no?
They're just going to tell them, hey, you just email over to the police department. Here's the police department's email address.
Okay.
Or you can call them and leave a voicemail if you
Okay.
don't want to email. And then we will take that information, but there won't be a CAD trip on that specifically. It's only encounters and above that we will actually make a CAD trip on. The other stuff, we'll keep the information. So we have those, sightings, if you will, if people are calling in, even though it says you don't need to do that. If they do, we'll log them. We'll keep track of them. But we won't be in our CAD system. Those won't be.
I have a question probably more for Jan or even more Derek. So how are our citizens going to realize that we just spent a lot of time building this wonderful plan that that still makes it into the Facebook groups about how we never do anything about coyotes, which I say coyotes, not coyotes.
Is that because you're from South Dakota?
Yeah, I went to the USD, so coyotes, go Yotes. Yeah, that's the other one. But I was just curious, what's the plan on letting citizens know that we're doing this?
Yeah, and I'll work with Derek. I think we have our monthly newsletter that we can put this information out. And again, I can defer to Derek in regard, we have a huge social media following with the city and our Parks and Rec. We have over 15,000 people on our Parks and Rec newsletter, so we have a pretty good area that we communicate that with. And certainly we can work, Andy, with you as well of different communication with the DNR, if that's an option.
Yeah, I'd love to partner and get more of our social media stuff going out. And then as we get more cities on board too, I think that's just something where it's going to blast to more people. And that's something, Amy, to your question as well. I think that we can measure progress by where else is this taking place and those collaborations too. It's a little bit more amorphous than hey, here's some numbers. But it's kind of the nature of the beast a little bit. It's like, tell the story a little bit more as opposed to here's numbers that are meeting goals.
I mean, I think a big part of it too is it is the presentation to our public and the education of it. This is not a coyote eradication program. This is a management plan. And again, as you so aptly put, we're never going to eradicate coyotes. And so the public has to expect that by us doing this is merely taking, I mean, it's more about education and more about learning about the coyotes and what they're doing within our community, but we're still going to have them within our community at all times, and people still need to be vigilant when they're walking their dogs and when they're walking out themselves. So I think that's something we just need to educate is, yes, we are taking, this is a great first step, this is a great affirmative step, but this is by no means saying that we are going to eliminate the danger of coyotes in our community altogether. So I think, does that sum it up pretty well?
I think that's a great observation and great way to put it. And, my hope is that this sort of management plan is a living document and we grow with it and learn what works really well in some areas and what works better in other areas as we go forward with it, because there's not a silver bullet approach as what you're saying. So yeah, and as a department, I'm hoping that we learn from it too. Like I said, this is the first urban one in Iowa. It exists in other places across the country, but I know there's other cities that can take this on as well.
Will elements of this plan be on the website as well? So like page 6 on. Fantastic. They got their
Coyotes.
page.
No.
No, it's coyotes. We're sticking with the Iowa way.
And I just think this is really thorough and I'm really impressed with this. And I mean, unfortunately, again, I believe, Derek takes a lot of responsibility for how this, and I know you do a great job, but unfortunately, I know next door is the bane of your existence because you only can post and you can't see what's going on. So I don't know if like a monthly or during those critical months, if you could maybe post it monthly or something. I don't know, but I mean, we see that as individuals. I mean, who knows what comes in my next door feed? I don't even hardly look at it anymore, but I know there's plenty of chat about coyotes.
We'll get together with Parks and Rec and put together a comprehensive strategy so that we can make sure we're hitting those key months and that people know. It'll likely be video, I mean, it'll be the gamut because this is a big plan.
Yeah. Well, good luck.
Thank you, truly, thank you, Jan, thanks to the staff and Andy and everybody that working together on this. Again, it's taking an affirmative step in this but there had to be expectations and there's gonna be a lot of education yet with our citizens, so. With that, is there a motion to approve it?
Motion to approve Council Letter 7575.
Motion by McBurney, second by Carver Montgomery. Discussion, please vote. All right, thank you. That item passes. That takes us to the end of our agenda. Mayor and council items. Amy?
Excited to see the listening session. Want to make sure we're getting that information out. And then Halloween, however the spirit moves us. Not exactly sure, yeah, if there's any more direction than that, but I guess if those of us who are going to be there, maybe we want to talk about that before we leave tonight.
Okay.
Otherwise, that's it.
Larry?
Only thing I have is the Grow Solar program is coming to an end. Final date to have everything set up is October 31st. They're having one last virtual event on Thursday, October 19th at 2 p.m. You can visit their Grow Solar page on Facebook to sign up. And I think Derek, if we could reshare it, I think they've been asking for folks to reshare that information. No progress from the last time as far as moving into the next tier. So if anything that we can do to push people in at that last final hour to hopefully bump it up a tier, that'd be nice. But otherwise, yeah, that's all I got.
Okay, thanks, Larry. Matt?
Nothing.
Adam?
Can and bottle redemption, everybody's favorite thing, but the high school now has a new option. So you can take your items in bulk, shove them through a window, and the proceeds go to the high school.
Oh, really?
So school system.
Where is it? At the high school?
Next to the baseball field in a very colorful shed. So if you drive next to the baseball field, you will see a blue shed. And if you don't like taking your cans and bottles and barcode scanning them, great way to get rid of them. So the school will benefit.
Cool. All right. Thanks for that.
There is a similar shed at the Waukee Fairway that benefits the Waukee
I know.
band program.
I've donated there many times. Be going this way now.
Well, we appreciate that. Well, I just wanted to remind everyone that early voting starts tomorrow for the November 7th election. You can actually vote if you live in Dallas County tomorrow and Thursday at the Waukee Schools Administration Building. And if you live in Polk County, Urbandale, on the 25th from 10 to 4 at our library. So lots of ways to get your vote in early. And I also wanted to congratulate my fellow council member, Matt Blake, on his promotion to major in the Iowa National Guard.
Thank you for that.
Sure. All right. Congratulations. All right, again, just to reiterate on this listening session, that will be next Tuesday at 7 o'clock at Fire Station 42. So we've been publicizing that, but if you keep working on that, and we hope to have a good turnout for that next Tuesday. So
Early communication seemed like it was kind of a Western Urbandale listening group. Is this anybody?
It's open to anyone. I think there was a gentleman from Patricia Park that said he wanted to.
Right, I think the early stuff when it was more out at 43, it was kind of focused on Western, but it's meant for everybody.
Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify.
Yep, absolutely.